Okay, let's talk about immigration and borders. They're, without a doubt, some of the most heated topics in politics today, right? But what if we push past all the slogans and the shouting? Well, when you do that, you start to find this really deep, principled debate about what a country even is and who gets to belong. So in this explainer, we're going to dive right into the core philosophical arguments behind this idea, this right to exclude, and it all kicks off with a simple but surprisingly tricky question.
So let's kick things off with a little puzzle. Just imagine for a second that California, or maybe Quebec, decided to build a wall around its borders, complete with armed guards and visa requirements just to get in. I mean, the very idea of it seems absurd, right? Almost horrifying. But why?
And that contrast, it's pretty fascinating when you think about it. Inside a country, we just take free movement for granted. It's a given. And yet, at a national border, the very same things we'd find so horrifying, fences, guards, visas, are somehow considered totally routine. So what is it that makes a national border so fundamentally different? Well, the answer has a lot to do with the nature of authority. All right, so to really get to the bottom of this right to exclude thing, we have to back up a little. We first need to understand what gives a state the right to make any rules at all. And that brings us to this concept of political authority.
You see, political authority, it's not just some abstract idea. It's the real, on-the-ground power a state uses every single day to create and enforce the rules of the game for an entire society. It's what lets courts hand out fines and what lets legislatures pass laws.
And this authority, it has a few key features we need to understand. For one, it can change its own rules. Its actions can be judged as fair or unfair, legitimate or illegitimate. And, this is crucial, it's different from just raw power. It claims it creates a genuine obligation for you to obey. And that last part, that's where things get really, really puzzling.
Because at its very core, political authority is making a kinda strange claim. It's asking you to obey, not because you necessarily agree with the rule, but simply because the authority is the authority. It's basically saying, do this just because we say so. So what makes that any different from a threat?
And this is the absolute key difference. A mugger compels you with a threat. You hand over your wallet to avoid getting hurt, but a police officer orders you to pull over. Now, they might have the power to compel you, sure, but the order itself claims a kind of legitimacy that the mugger's threat just doesn't have. You're supposed to obey the order itself, not just the threat that might be behind it.
Okay, so now that we've got that foundation laid out, let's bring it all back to borders. How does this whole concept of authority apply to immigration? Well, philosophers tend to break down the claims that migrants might make into two totally distinct questions.
And it is absolutely crucial that we pull these two ideas apart. First, you've got territorial access. That's just the right to be physically present on the land. And second, there is full membership. That's the right to become a citizen, with all the rights and privileges that come with it. And as we're about to see, the arguments for each one are very, very different.
So let's tackle that first one, the question of membership, of citizenship. This is actually where most philosophers tend to agree that the state's case for excluding people is at its strongest.
So a really popular argument you'll hear is the states as clubs analogy. Think about it. The Boy Scouts can decide to exclude girls because it's part of how they define themselves. So can a nation-state just choose its members in the same way? Well, here's the problem, as philosopher Joseph Cairns points out. States, unlike private clubs, have this powerful obligation to treat people impartially and with equal concern.
And building on that idea, you have the philosopher David Miller, who argues that a political community has a right to control who joins in order to preserve its own distinctive national culture. Now, this isn't about violating human rights. I mean, there's no basic human right to be French, for example, but it is about a people's right to collective self-determination.
Then there's another angle, this one from Michael Blake, and it's all about responsibility. When a country grants someone citizenship, the existing citizens take on a whole new set of obligations. Things like protecting the newcomers' rights and providing them with welfare benefits. And because they're the ones taking on this new burden, he argues, they have some right to say no to it.
Okay, but what about the idea that the right to leave a country should mean you have a right to enter another one? Well, there's a simple analogy that shows the little flaw in that reasoning, at least when we're talking about full membership. See, you have a fundamental right to get married. But that right doesn't mean that any specific person is obligated to marry you. And in the same way, your right to emigrate doesn't automatically obligate a specific country to grant you citizenship.
All right, so let's switch gears and move on to that second question, which honestly is a much tougher nut to crack.
Can a state stop someone from simply being on its land if we set aside the whole issue of citizenship entirely?
So the cosmopolitan view here is pretty straightforward. Freedom of movement should be the default setting. There's a really strong presumption that people should be free to move around, and the burden of proof should be on anyone who wants to restrict that freedom.
You know, one of the biggest arguments you hear for restricting access is that it's necessary to protect a unique national culture. But as this example from the source material points out, free movement doesn't just automatically erase cultural differences. I mean, people have been moving freely between Edinburgh, London, and Barcelona for ages. And yet, they all remain very distinct, very much themselves.
Now, David Miller brings up a couple more objections. First, he points out that even inside a country, our movement is restricted by things like traffic laws or trespassing rules. But the comeback to that is pretty simple. Migrants are just asking to be subject to the same rules as everyone else, not for special privileges. Then, Miller argues that the right to movement only protects our basic interests. But if we actually accepted that line of reasoning, a city like London could theoretically stop someone from Cumbria from moving there to become an opera singer, which just seems absurd.
So, when you put all these arguments on the scale, a pretty clear picture starts to emerge. Philosophically speaking, the case for denying someone full membership or citizenship is actually pretty strong. But the case for denying them simple access to the territory, well, it's surprisingly weak.
And all of this leads us to this core tension, this really profound and frankly unresolved question at the very heart of the modern state.
So this whole thing leaves us with a massive, profound question. If the philosophical case for letting people in is strong, but the right to deny them citizenship is also strong, then what kind of societies are we actually building? I mean, it points toward a future where we could have these large permanent populations of non-citizens living within our borders. What would that mean for democracy, for social cohesion, for justice? That's the puzzle we're all left to solve.